Hi, and welcome everyone to the Creative Cast. I'm Lucas Oman, and we're very lucky today to have Mark Tullius on the show today. He's an author of, he has published already 13 different books on topics like horror and suspense and science fiction. And he's also the podcast host of the Vicious Whispers with Mark Tullius. And I'm really excited to have you here. Welcome to the show.
And thank you so much for having me on, Lucas. I really appreciate this. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while, so this is really cool.
Yeah, we did actually try to have an interview a few months ago, but it was bad on my side. The internet sometimes really hits you hard.
When you you never know what's gonna happen. And like today, I'm in New York, but I'm sitting in my car to record this because I couldn't find a quiet place in the hotel, and my family's still asleep. So, we just do our best to try to work around things. And I was like, there's no way I was gonna cancel. I was like, we already tried this once. I was like, I wanna talk to you. So we're doing it.
Yeah. So you're tuning in from New York. Originally you're based in California and close to LA, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we're maybe 30 minutes. Well, it's like 20 miles from LA, but that could be an hour and a half drive with traffic.
Okay. Oh, wow.
During the pandemic, it was nice. During the pandemic, it was 20 minutes, 25 minutes. But yeah, so right outside of Los Angeles.
Okay, great. So first off, I like to, get our guests to introduce themselves and get a little bit of background story so the audience gets to know you a little bit better and, get there into transitioning how you end up becoming an author.
Awesome. So I am a father. I have two kids. Lived in California most of my life, went to college on the East Coast. It wasn't until after college, I was probably about 2021 when I first got bitten by the writing bug. I was on a plane trip to Pennsylvania and I just had this idea. And when I got there, even though I was there to go see a girlfriend, all I wanted to do was write. And I'd never written before, really. And so I just found that I had this obsession, and I developed it more and more while I was doing other jobs, while I was fighting. I was trying to fight professionally with both boxing and MMA. Both of those were terrible. But the whole time, while I'm fighting, while I'm working graveyard shifts, I would get jobs where I could work late at night when, don't have any real work to do. I just have to be awake. And then that's when I would get writing in. And so, I was always doing it for fun, but then I just realized like, oh, I really like this. I think I'm getting okay at it. I think I'm getting good enough, and let's go for it. So the last since 2012, I've been putting out books and, really enjoying it. And it seems like the fans have been enjoying it pretty much too.
Yeah. Okay. So how old were you when you actually started to figure this out for you?
Let's see, 2012. So yeah. So 9 years ago was when, so I was 39 when I first published, my first book was published, Brightside. And that's the one that is translated in German now. And then it was I was probably 21, 22 when I started. So it would, and that's one reason why I was able to release a lot of work too, because I had so many short stories written already. And I was able to rework them and then put them out. So I think I have like 100 short stories that are published between Twisted Reunion, Untold Mayhem. They're not all old stories, but I was able to repurpose those stories, make them even better, and then put them out. So which was nice.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can see the big gap there between writing maybe shorter stories and actually publishing a proper book.
Yeah, and that's one thing, because when I first started out, I was really good about writing a short story, getting it nice and clean, and then automatically submitting it to different magazines, which a lot of professional authors do that. They think that's, a great way to do it is to send it out first, and then once it's published, then you could reuse it yourself for the most part, maybe a couple years down the road. But with most of mine, I plan on just sending everything out myself. I haven't been submitting to magazines. I was like, no, what? I just want to have all my work myself. I want to have all the rights to it. And, I'll put out a book when I have enough material.
Okay. So you kind of more relying on your own, capabilities of publishing it.
Yeah. That's, and It's overwhelming. It could be definitely overwhelming, especially with as many projects as I have, uh, because to do everything myself. So I have to do the marketing, I have to do advertising, I have to
Yeah.
do, if I want to be successful, I have to do it, or I have to hire the people to do it. I do
Yeah.
have some assistants, but like maybe the last week, all I've been doing is fine tuning my traumatic brain injury book, which in German, I guess you guys don't have the word TBI. It's SHT. Um,
What does it stand for?
TBI stands for traumatic brain injuries.
Okay.
Um, and in German, I just looked up the translation, and I forget what it is, but
Oh, I
I know
actually
the
don't
initials
know.
are SHT. The last, it's something to do with head trauma.
Okay.
But I forget what the German translation is. But because we're doing the title in German too, so
Mm.
having that book translated so we could release the German and the English version the same day at the Frankfurt Book Fair. So it should be coming
Nice.
out right then. Yeah. So I'm really trying to break into the German market. That's my goal. A lot of authors neglect it, and it's so many readers. So I was like, you know what? And because I'm trying to learn the language, and I want to see my ancestry and everything else.
Mhm.
I was like, okay. I was like, yeah, this is cool. This is what I want to do. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I've heard like I've been noticing that you have a a big um push towards the German culture and the German market, and that's based on heritage. You just said, or
Um, a little bit on heritage. I think my last name is Roman, but is all my ancestry is German. So that's where I have a lot of relatives, or half of mine. I guess the other half is Italian.
Mm,
So I have relatives out there. I've talked to a couple. So that always kind of interested me. But when I started looking to learn a language, it was simply because that was one of the activities that's great for your brain if you have brain damage or if you're getting older. So anyone should benefit from learning a language. And I was like, oh, let's learn a really sexy language that women are going to love.
definitely
German.
German, definitely.
And a nice and easy one with short sentences. No. So, yeah, the language is incredibly difficult. But the nice thing is, like, I'm not trying to become an expert. I just do a little bit every day,
Hmm.
and I'll probably never get. Who knows if I'll ever get fluent enough to have a real conversation.
Hmm.
But I'm learning a lot of words, and but I'm working my brain every time, and that's what I do. Same thing with music. I started learning guitar and bass,
Yeah,
and that because music is another thing that really works our brain,
yeah.
that helps create new pathways. And so I was like, and I realized, I was like, okay, I'm having fun. At first I was concerned. I was like, because of being perfectionist is like, okay, I want to be really good at that. I don't want
Mm.
anyone to hear me. I don't want to be terrible. I don't want to do something I'm not good at. But then I realized, no, I'm enjoying this. So even if I don't sound that great, I could see improvements every day. And if the goal is simply to enjoy yourself and to learn a little bit, then I was like, well, I'm doing that every day. So I shouldn't worry about the final outcome. I shouldn't worry about being perfect.
Mm.
So that's how I've been handling that.
Okay, clearly. I mean, totally learning something or keep learning something new keeps us young. It keeps triggering our creativity, which
Mhm.
makes us stay focused and not stay happy in a way as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and like if you could do little things that make you feel happy, my day, I never know how my day is going to turn out. Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I'm very fortunate to be, a stay-at-home dad where I'm able to be at home every day. And some days I'll go out and I'll do different things, job related things. But for the most part, I can determine what I do on my day. And maybe 30 minutes is going to be in the sauna and I'll work on my breathing. And,
Mhm.
maybe a little bit's going to be in the pool and I'll do something physical. And then, a little bit of guitar and a little bit of language, and just all these little things make
Yeah.
for like a really good and fulfilling day.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds like a balanced day, and you're surrounded by stuff that keeps inspiring you, which is great.
Mhm.
I want to go back on um, specifically the author part of it of your life, which is actually why um, did you end up taking that route? What is it about writing that enjoys you so much?
You know what? I didn't know. I never knew why. And I didn't want to be a writer because I was like, oh, writers are nerds. I don't want to be a nerd. I had in my head, I was an idiot. I always equated men, being big, strong, military,
Okay.
warfare, violent, fighters. And that's probably one of the big reasons why I went into fighting and football and everything else.
Mm.
I had this idea that's a real man, so I think my psyche didn't want to be the guy that was writing a little story or whatever else. But I realized how much I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. And I just, yeah, I was doing it for myself. And then when I would have other people read it, seeing their reactions was usually pretty exciting because
Mm.
I usually disturbed them.
They were
And
like, "Oh my god,
yeah,
what
they're
is
like,
happening?"
yeah, early on, my parents said that they're like, "No, what? No offense, but we're locking our doors whenever you sleep over."
Mission
um,
accomplished.
yeah. So it was just something that I really enjoyed, whether it was a short story or a longer novel. I I like it a lot. Only thing I don't like writing is nonfiction. Both of my nonfiction projects were a lot of work.
Mhm.
It's a lot harder. It's not nearly as much fun. You don't get to choose what happens and just make up anything you want. Um, but being able to write anything that's been a lot of fun. I'm finally taking the marketing part of it seriously, like more of
Mhm.
a career, realizing because for me, money was never really an issue. I never had to write to be successful because my wife's a lawyer. I don't need to work. I don't need to make money. But now I realize, like, no, but I think I have something important. I do want to spread it. I want to spread even my fiction. I used to always look at fiction, whether it's horror, suspense, sci-fi, it doesn't matter what it was. I always kind of looked at it as something like, well, that's not important. That's just make believe stories, but that's not really true. And I've had a lot of readers write to me saying, hey, this is I got something important from this. I got this from your book, or I got that from your book, or
Mm.
this about civil rights or that. So I've realized I could put a lot of messages in there. I could sneak them in. I could have something important. And then with my book on MMA, I think that really showed people who fighters are, yeah, a better understanding who mixed martial artists are, the
Mhm.
guys that get men and women that go into the cage. And with this traumatic brain injury book, this is by far the most important thing I've ever written because I know of so many people that are affected by traumatic brain injuries, by
Yeah.
whether it's a fall, whether football, soccer, rugby, all those sports have a ton of traumatic brain injuries. But there's even so many more from people that fall down and hit their head. There's little things that can trigger traumatic brain injuries and this inflammation process. And when that starts, I went into writing this book completely thinking I was fine, completely thinking I had missed, all the brain damage. I was lucky, it hadn't messed me up. And that's with me having I was knocked unconscious like 8 different times
Oh wow.
with football and fighting, and then all the other concussions. I've had car accidents. I really did a number on myself, but I thought I was okay. And then I started doing all the research. I started doing testing. I got to see. I was like, oh man, I have pretty severe. Well, I shouldn't say severe, but pretty significant brain damage.
Oh wow.
My frontal lobe, very under functioning. So, very hard to have impulse control. So if I told myself, hey, you're not going to do that thing today, I'd even write it down. Five
Mm.
minutes later, I'm doing that thing. So I had very little impulse control, emotional regulation, getting upset at the littlest thing, whether it's road rage
Mhm.
or anything, something little might happen and I would react way above what I should have.
Right.
And then a lot of anxiety, depression, all these other factors that went into it. And, luckily through this book, through this process, by undergoing these treatments, man, I'm in 100% different place. In fact, I don't think I would have made it through the pandemic, through this stressful time,
Mhm.
if I hadn't gone through that stuff. I would have been dead or divorced or in prison. Something bad would have happened. And it's when you see guys, men and women, when they're hitting their 40s, depending on when they had that damage, that's when lots of the damage shows up because
Okay.
your hormones are no longer regulated, and then you're just a mess, and you
Mm.
don't know why. And that's why with the book I'm calling it It's called TBI or CTE. CTE is chronic traumatic encephalopathy, like the scientific word for what they find after like football players are dead and they look at their brain. um but the subtitle is what the hell is wrong with me, because it's trying to figure out like, okay, I didn't know what was wrong. I kind of knew something was wrong, and I think
Mhm.
that's a feeling that a lot of people have, like, okay, something's not right with me, but I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to keep on going.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's why I think, I'm very excited about that book. That's what I want to spread, that message
Mhm.
as far as I can, let people know, just make them aware of it and make them take a honest look at themselves. Cause I think it's easy just to be like, I'm fine, I'm cool, I'm good. It's like, well, maybe you're not, I think a lot of us put
Yeah.
mental health to the side.
Okay. Maybe they kind of don't want to accept it and just roll with it.
Yeah, yeah. I did not want to accept, like, having to accept that I had brain damage. That was tough. And the whole time my wife had been telling me, she's like, "You don't have brain damage. You don't have brain damage. Don't think that way." Because I was getting really depressed.
Okay.
She found me one day sitting at my at the table, and I was
Mhm.
crying, and I was watching videos of boxers, professional boxers that were now in wheelchairs, that could barely talk, that could barely think.
Mhm.
And in my head, I'm like, man, I was like, that's what I'm going to end up as. And she's like, no, you're not. You don't have any of that. You don't show those symptoms. So even my own wife didn't realize that I had lots of those symptoms, because we don't want to think that, oh yeah, we might have dementia, or we're going to end up having dementia. A lot of people, that's a scary thought. So whatever it is, whether it's, okay, do I really have anxiety? Do I really have depression? Do I really have suicidal thoughts? Those could be all really scary things that, yeah, you don't want to accept.
Mm-mm. And that, so you kind of you're still writing a book. It's not published yet, right?
It is not published yet. I got the cover today. It's being translated into German
Mhm.
this week, and the advanced copy is going out to all the different doctors that I
Yeah.
interviewed, and different celebrities, and trying to get uh, blurbs and all that. So
Mhm.
this is now like the pre-launch phase. So the book is all written. It's just now it has to be published and go through that phase.
Nice, nice. Looking forward for the book. So you kind of you obviously you wrote that book on a self-experience basis, right? Because it
Mhm.
has a lot to do with you, and it's probably what um, moved you in the first place to start that book, as there might not be um, that well of a coverage of that for that topic for the suffering ones.
Right, right. Yeah, I think it's only now becoming a little bit more mainstream. We're seeing more and more articles about stuff happening in the newspaper about traumatic brain injuries, but it's still something that has been really pushed down. A lot of places don't like it. I know the Concussion Legacy Foundation, who I donated my brain to. So when I die,
Mm,
they'll cut open my brain, figure out if I had damage. Um, they're making a really big push in other countries to spread awareness and to make sport safer. But I know, like in Australia, there's a lot of pushback. All the
mm,
rugby players, they don't want the safety precautions. They don't want stuff. A lot of athletes think it's going to change the game, that they don't want it. Um, but the nice thing that I learned too is you can still play a contact sport. You can still risk, getting a concussion and be healthy. It's just you have to take the time after the concussion to heal yourself.
mm.
But that's one of the biggest things, because it is hard. I have a hard time watching fighting or football, or things where people are taking severe head blows to the head. But at least I know it's like, okay, they can fix themselves for the most part, after that damage. If they're careful and they don't continue to take damage after damage after damage, then
Mm.
they should be okay.
Okay, nice. Um, just to be frank with you, I kind of I feel the passion you have for that right now, and
Mm.
I can really I always feel I kind of share or feel like excitement sometimes when people talk about the project, and I really like that, and I find it quite brave to actually write a whole book about something that is so hard to accept for one on its own, right? And not only accepting that, but actually doing the most out of it and turning it into a strength, right? Which is often the best you can do with fears.
Hmm. Yeah, it was that's excellent, and that's what I think, man. I think it's about embracing fear. Uh, One of the biggest things, the biggest part of the book is one of my friends from that I played football with at Brown University. So I played
Mm-hmm.
football with him. He didn't go on to do anything else physical after graduating, but he developed brain damage, like severe brain damage. He had a lot of brain problems. It even affected his ability to fight cancer. So he couldn't go through chemo. He went through chemo one time. He had leukemia, realized that the combination of his brain damage and the leukemia or the cancer treatment was going to be too much for him. He couldn't do it. So he knew he was going to die. He contacted me. I spent time with him and his family, talking to them about the brain damage, about how they coped, how they went through it. But what I was able, and I think I had about 3 different visits with him. But man, that was so hard to see, because I had a lot of guilt for, because I was looking at him like, okay, why does he have this? How is he different from me? So I was very selfish when I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
what can I do differently? I don't want to end up like that. But then I was able to see just what a powerful thing it was, man, of seeing how he was living his life. He was inviting friends over. He was just so positive. He was doing all the things he wanted to with his family before he died. He was talking to me openly about it so I could share it in the book to further, spread the message, because him and his wife both realized how important it was. But I don't know if I'd want to do the same thing, talk about, because I wasn't even really close friends with him. So I was like, if I was going to die a month down the road, do I really want to spend any of that time talking to someone I don't know that well about something painful? So that really moved me a lot. That's a big part of the book. The book's dedicated to him, even though he's already passed him. And but uh but yeah, being able to, his example for me of going against fear is like, he's going up against death, and he was just so gracious and brave and everything else. I was like, that's how I want to go out. That's how I want to live my life. So not only is that how I want to face death, but I was like, that's how I want to face life.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was that definitely helped me a lot.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I mean, that gotta change you, right? Seeing someone like that,
Yeah.
putting everything he got
Hmm.
out there. Okay, that's quite impressive. Um, I actually wanted to also talk with you about the big challenges and the successes you've been experiencing when it comes to um, writing as a creative process and creating a book and publishing it.
I would say one of the biggest challenges, well, and for anyone out there that's considering writing, but they're not sure whether or not they can do it, I think that this is what's going to stop them too, is just thinking that you aren't good enough or that you don't know how.
Mm-hmm.
So even at my stage in writing, I still have that self-doubt sometimes. Um, and like last month, I was not able to work on one of my books. I was trying. It was very frustrating. I wouldn't even call it a writer's block. And it might have been just because I was distracted with too many different things, but this has happened over and over. So one of the big challenges is self-doubt, of saying like, oh, I'm not good enough. It's not going to be good enough. That alone will stop a lot of people. That's made me want to sabotage myself. Then there's not knowing whether or not that an idea is good enough to continue. The book that I was having a problem with, it's actually book 2 in a 5-book series. So in my head, I'm like, I was getting very upset, very frustrated. I was like, if I can't write book 2, or if book 2 is this much of a problem, then how am I going to get through 3, 4, and 5? Is it going to be worth it? Let's just throw the whole thing away, even though I already wrote book 1. Because in my head, I was trying to rationalize it too. I was like, well, life is short, and writing 4 books, if I'm not into them, that's a lot of my life that I just
Mm-hmm.
threw away, or at least my creative life. But what was cool was I took my time not only to sit on it, but then to talk to other people. I was talking to my wife about it. I talked to my fan club about it. I'm really open with myself, with my shortcomings, vulnerabilities, whatever, because I think we all have them. So why not share ours so other people could be like, oh yeah, I got that too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but by talking to them, they gave me some great ideas, and then I was able to rework things. I was like, oh, I could do this. I'm going to write about their early years. I'm going to turn those into short stories that will help the rest of the book, and it will give me more material. So now, like, once I made that decision, once I got it straight in my mind, I was like, okay, this is good. I can do it. Then I just started blasting through it, and that's all I've been working on the plane. I wrote one whole short story, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna knock this thing out. So there are a lot of there's a lot of ups and downs. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people think maybe writing is just fun, it's just going to keep going. It's like, oh no, it's like it goes. And
Roller coaster.
I've had another challenge was, my, and a lot of this was going back to my mental health before being a little fragile. But when I released Unlocking the Cage, my book on MMA fighters, in my head, I was like, that was going to be a big book. It was going to be super successful. It was going to be just so take off. Right before I released it, I went through a bad depression. I completely shut down all social media.
Mm.
So I didn't put out a word. I don't even know off on release date if I had any ads going out. I don't think I had any ads going out. I didn't do anything that I was supposed to as an author to help my book have any kind of success. I just went into this bad depression. And there's been a couple times where I've done that. That might have been the time I shut down my podcast too. I had a podcast with over 100 and something episodes, and I just completely shut it down. I was like, not a word, not an episode to say goodbye or anything like that. I was like, nope, this doesn't matter. Just all that work gone.
Oh, okay.
So, I've definitely had challenges, and and early on too, I think there was a lot of doubt of like, okay, do I know what I'm doing? I was reading a lot of books on writing. I was listening to other people talk about writing. But then I finally found a mentor who gave me some great advice, and it was like, okay, just embrace the way that you think. And this is something I think all artists can benefit from. And I think most probably have this, but really embrace the way that you think as an individual, not trying to be like anyone else. You're not trying to be another podcaster. You're not trying to be another famous person. You're just being yourself. And that's why it works, because it's being real and it's unique and no one else is like you. That was something I had a hard time accepting, because I didn't like me. So, I don't want to be me. I'm going to try to hide me. I'm going to try to hide my dark stuff or whatever else. But now I'm like, you know what? Yeah, this is me. Like I'm dark. I'm kind of crude. I'm kind of, I have some whatever, but that's just how I am, and that's how the writing's going to be, and I'm going to write what I want. And but yeah, if you could just embrace who you are, don't try to be someone else. I think that was one of the big things that really helped me a lot.
Kind of trying to maybe not paying too much attention to how your surroundings perceive you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I assume that helps a lot. I mean, normally when you try to impersonate a persona you're not, it oftentimes is to please the crowd rather than anything else,
Yeah.
rather than yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's no way, and that's another nice thing to realize too, for anyone that's going into this, you're not going to please everyone, and so there's no point in trying. You and even though now I kind of know who my readers are and what they like and don't like, that doesn't go into any of my head when I'm coming up with a book. Like I might be like, oh no, I want to do this. Like this isn't a technique that is approved, or that a lot of people might not like this, but for me it makes sense, so I'm going to use it in this book. Because people are going to give you a 5-star review, and it's like, yeah, that might feel good, they like me. But then someone might give me a 1-star review, and that 1-star review doesn't mean I'm less of an author or less of a person or anything like that. It's just like, well, their opinion, it wasn't a good fit. So I think that's important for artists to realize, like, not everyone's going to like you. It doesn't matter what the genre or whatever else, like even within your little genre, there's going to be people that love you, people that hate you. So just be real to yourself, enjoy what you're doing. If you enjoy what you do, people are going to find you. I think you're going to be successful, but that is probably the biggest thing. I couldn't fake, I could probably write some romance novels and be super successful and whatever else, but I wouldn't like it. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be legitimate. So I was like, no, I was like, I'm gonna do the things that I like because life is too short to be messing around with other stuff, I think.
Yeah, clearly. And I think I'm pretty sure as one of the biggest hurdles we all of us that go into these kind of creative processes, whether it is writing a book or being a photographer or videographer or a poet or whatever. And it's accepting or accepting the fear that you might not succeed, um, but doing what you like, and which is more fulfilling, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that fear of success, I'm glad you mentioned that too, the fear of failure. That's been a big one for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's one reason why I've self-destructed, because it's a lot easier to self-destruct and say, oh well, I self-destructed, instead of saying I failed. That book failed, Unlocking a Cage failed, for whatever standards I have
Mm,
for failing or succeeding. um but yeah, no, that's an excellent point, because that's been a big concern. It's one I've been dealing with about going to Germany, because I've never been to that book fair, the
mm,
Frankfurt Book Fair. So that alone, going to a fair and being an exhibitor, that alone is intimidating, because I've been to plenty, and man, sometimes people just don't care about you. It could
yeah.
be you might not sell many books. It might feel like a complete failure,
Mm,
until you go back and you look like, oh no, I didn't make this relationship, that relationship. A lot of people discovered me, blah 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 blah. Um, but yeah, that fear of failure was making me question whether or not I should go to Germany. I was like, not only the fear of failure at the book fair, but then like
mm.
speaking the language, getting around, is it going to be a failure? But
Yeah.
so I
Is
had
it
to
worth
really
it?
tell myself that. But I was like, no, I can't be scared of it. I just got to go. Nothing's going to happen if I don't go. But if I do go, there is that possibility of a lot of different connections. Meet with foreign representatives, sell my book in different languages. So,
Mm,
but none of that would happen if I was scared, if I stay at home. So
yeah.
that's what I was like, okay, I have to force myself out of that comfort zone, and I have to do it.
Mm. It's clearly how the way you see it. It's the perspective that
Mhm.
um, changes everything. Um, as you said, if you don't go, you have already lost. You can
Yeah.
only win going.
Mhm.
It's just how high are, let's say, your expectations that measure how much you succeed or not.
Yeah, and again, that's another excellent thing. My definition of success has definitely changed a lot. Because before it was money. It's like, okay, if I have to sell that many number of books to be successful in my mind, or to
Mhm.
be like Stephen King, or to be, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's setting realistic expectations. And I think it's great to have awesome high goals, but also make them realistic and be like, okay, if I land somewhere between here and here,
Mhm.
then I'm super happy. But always having to go back, especially with someone that's written their first book. Your first book is probably not going to be successful. I think that's where a lot of people are going to hit depressions, because they're going to be like, damn, not even my family wanted to read my book. I couldn't get, my friends gave me a 2-star review. He said it
Mhm.
sucked. It's going to be very difficult. You're going to think that a lot of people are going to flock to you, are going to read it, or just because you wrote a book. And it's like, well, that's not the case. But going back to that, and being like, well, it was a success because I wrote a book. How many people have written a book? I did this. How many? So really looking at the things that you do and taking credit for them. That's something that I've been really bad at. Generally, I'll finish a book, and the
Mm.
very next day I'm working on something else, and I've already forgotten about that other book, even though I should celebrate and it's been 3 years or whatever else. Like, nope, I'm ready to go on to the next thing, and
Yeah.
whatever. So I think it is good to take, to enjoy whatever success you are having, because you should be proud of it, because you have done something that a lot of people won't. A lot of people will not go into any artistic endeavor because of that failure to succeed, because they're worried about how others are going to judge them.
Yeah.
Uh, my daughter just got, she's 13, and just started singing in a little pop rock band. They made her the singer, and she's like,
Yeah.
well, it's just such a little thing. I was like, I have so much respect for anyone that gets up on a stage, you know,
Yeah. Oh,
anyone that
hell yeah.
shares themselves, whether it's through a podcast or whatever it is like
Mm.
you're sharing a part of yourself, you're putting yourself out there. So that alone is a success, I would say.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Mhm.
I like that. I was just thinking of, or it just reminded me of my own brother that actually is quite into writing as well, and he's working on his first book, and he writes mostly science fiction, fantasy stories, and I kind of feel like he's in that position right now where he's doing his he's trying to make his first artwork, and he really is passionate, and he has the luck that it feels really easy to him to
Awesome.
write and get it done. But at the same time, as you say, your first book rarely is going to be successful or praised. So
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to have something for him or someone like him for that situation, an idea that he can hold on to, so he doesn't get too frustrated and let it all go.
Well, and something else that you have to tell him, I'm actively looking right now for a German author to work with um, for my Try Not to Die series.
Mm.
Those are smaller books. They're either sci-fi or horror. Every couple of pages, the story, there's a decision to make. If you choose the right one, the story keeps going. If you choose wrong, you die.
Oh,
So there's a
nice,
lot of ways to die. Yeah, it's called Try Not to Die. The whole thing is about dying.
nice.
Um, but
Sounds cool.
I
I love it.
yeah, I just found someone in Amsterdam I think I'm going to write with. And she doesn't have much writing experience, but I'm trying to find people in different countries because
Mm.
I couldn't write a book that's set in Germany because I know nothing about Germany. It wouldn't be realistic. It wouldn't be
Mm.
something that the readers could really appreciate. You know,
Yeah,
maybe
and we
US readers.
relate a little bit more to.
Yeah, so I like jumping into books with co-authors in that series that have, you know, whatever they're passionate about, whatever they know. I was like, okay, let's do that. You help, you know, I'll help guide the story. I'll kind of, you know, we'll put it in my format, and then whatever they're giving me, then I'll rework it. Then it's a fun process.
Yeah.
It could be a little bit brutal for an author when they see my red marks, what I do with how I just when I do my editing,
Yeah.
but I tell people all the time, like, that's just what you do. I could have gone through a book like 7, 8 times, and then I'll still destroy it and try to make it better. You know, you always want to make
Mm-hmm.
your stuff a little bit better. You want to add another effect to your photo, or take it from a different angle, or whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
you could be like, okay, that's good, but let's make it a little bit better. Let's make it a little bit better, without doing that too much. I mean, because you could, otherwise you'll never put anything out. So you have
Mm.
to be okay with it. But long story short, talk to your brother. Let him know the offer is out there. If he wants to talk to me, I would be happy to talk to him. I write with friends that have never written anything before, just because I know everyone has a story,
Mm.
and I know I could help pull it out of them. I know if I work with another person, we'll make a really cool product. It doesn't matter how much writing they've done. If they are a creative person, you know, I could do something with that. So,
Okay, great.
yeah,
I'll keep that in mind. I'll get you to connect it. Sounds so.
awesome.
So one of the um topics I wanted to touch with you as well is, uh, what is coming towards it. What's the future like? You said already, you're planning on going to Frankfurt to this book fair with this almost finished book you're working on right now. Um, is that your main project right now when it comes to your author career?
It is, especially because of how important it feels to me. This feels way more important than any fiction book that I'm going to put out. Lots of my fiction fans probably hate me for that, and they don't like how long it's delayed my other fiction.
Oh,
But,
okay.
you know, I was like, I want to do something that could actually make the world a little bit better. You know, if
Mm.
if I could improve one person's life, like, that's awesome. if I could improve, 10 or 100, then to me is like, that's when it starts becoming amazing, and what a rewarding feeling it is to know that you made a difference in someone's life, that someone actually believed you enough to, if my words can move someone to look at themselves or to start taking some medicine or to start doing, take any kind of action, I
Mhm.
like, then that's amazing. So I do have a lot of focus on that, but um when I go to the book fair, I'm also going to really be pushing my Try Not to Die series because I have so many books in it. Three books are out. The last one was Try Not to Die in the Pandemic, which is, we weren't sure whether or not it was too soon to put that out. Um, but I have Try Not to Die at Death Fest, which is like a heavy metal festival. Um, Try Not to Die Super High, Try Not to Die in the Wizard's Tower, which is like Dungeons and Dragons fantasy.
Mhm.
So all these different little areas. So when I go to the book fair, I'm really going to be pushing that series as well. And I have probably another 12 or so that are in the works,
Mhm.
and so every year I want to be releasing 2 to 3 Try Not to Dies. And in addition to that, I'm also working on my 5 book series. So I have a lot of different projects that I go from one to the other.
Yeah.
But it's nice though, because I used to get overwhelmed by it, but now I was like, no, it doesn't matter what, like, I'm not worried about the order of the books being completed. So I don't care if the Wizard's Tower is book 7 or book 3 or book 4 or whatever. It doesn't matter where these books fall. So I tell the co-authors, like, hey, it's up to you how fast you want to move on it. If you want to get the book done out by next year, then we need to really hurry. You need to get me these things. We'll work on it. So I just jump in onto these books whenever these guys come back to me,
Mm.
and so there's that way I'm not getting overwhelmed. I could work on my stuff, I could pull out, and go into different projects. So but those are the 3 main things right now. So it's the traumatic brain injury book and the Try Not to Dies, I'd say, are the top 2.
Okay. Nice. 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 So I like the way you do it because you have a lot of projects going on at the same time, and which probably helps you be good in all of them and keep yourself focused. Because if you have only one that you have, you dedicate your full self on all the time, that can be maybe overwhelming, and that's when you get frustrated and take big breaks. And but if you can just distract yourself with different projects that are all equally important, that's
Mhm.
when you're always working and keep being productive, right?
Yeah, and that's I think that's excellent. That excellent point, and not even something that I'm aware of when I do it. Um, but that is what I kind of do. I reward myself with these other things.
Mm.
Like on the plane, besides doing a short story, I allowed myself to play with some death scenes from Try Not to Die at Death Fest, and it was just like a little reward. It's something small. I felt really good after I did it. I spent maybe but I got a lot of work done, and now I'm excited about that project again.
Mm.
So now I can go back into this other thing, so it just, each one just kind of builds me up, and it's a nice feeling. But I did have to go through that whole, getting overwhelmed by having too many projects. But that's when I was worried about when they were going to come out, and I was worried about all these other things. But now that I take it more like, oh no, my brain wants to work on this, so I'm going to work on that, or this would be fun to work on today. So
Yeah.
it's trying to find the balance between being too stretched out and or being too confined. Is like, do I want to be really confined to one? Do I want to have too many? So it's just finding what works for you, and that finding that balance, that goes with not only within work but within life, of course. In trying to find the balance between, if you have a regular job and writing, whatever your artwork is, or the big one for me has been, okay, finding the right balance between family and writing.
Mm.
How much time should I be playing with my son, compared to, because he's young and I should spend this time with him, compared to, hey, daddy really wants to work because he has this book to work, to finish. So where do you draw that line? Where do you make it it's just finding the right balance for you, your family, friends, whatever else. So what works best for you as an individual, and stick with that.
Okay. Nice. Nice. I actually want to talk with you about your podcast a little bit as well and touch on that.
Mhm.
And so because you're doing it on on the side at the same time. When did you start? Yeah, like, because you have over 100 episodes.
Yeah, so I did unlock the first one was called Unlocking, and so I think I hit 113 episodes before I had my mental breakdown and I threw it away. And that's right when I had started Vicious Whispers,
Oh,
the
it's
new
actually your
podcast.
second podcast. All right.
Yeah, so and I had started those two overlapped for maybe 2 weeks, and
Mm.
that might have been part of why I shut down. Maybe I was too overwhelmed. So I stopped that one and I picked it up again maybe it might have been a year and a half, 2 years later, and I realized I was ready for it again. I thought I was like, okay, let's try this again. Uh, I use the podcast to share chapters of my books. Like, so
Mm.
I'll share an entire audio book, maybe over like 20 chapters, 20 weeks, or short stories, which are kind of fun. So there's a short story at the end of each episode, and
Mm.
those are cool. My problem with the podcast was lots of the episodes I wasn't I wasn't interviewing anyone. So I was just talking about my week and the writing process, and I was like, that's boring.
Okay.
I don't want to listen to myself talk. You know, every once in a while. I know my wife doesn't. My kids for sure not. Uh, but so how many people really want to listen to me? And that's how I was feeling too. I was going
Mm.
into it being like, I'm kind of boring. They're just here for the story. It wasn't until later that I found out from listeners like, oh no, that they do like hearing about my day to day and what happened with me and my wife or whatever else. Uh, but for me, it's way more exciting to interview people. I love talking with people. I'm an introvert, but I realized when I started going around the country for my MMA book and interviewing fighters,
Yeah.
I was getting so excited, man. It was a really rough, it was a hard thing to do. It's hard to break that shell. I told myself, I was like, well, I've never done an interview before. I'd never run a camera before for an interview. I didn't know what I was doing. But when I started doing it, I was just, man, I was so filled with life. I was like, why am I feeling so good about talking with these different individuals?
Mm.
And I realized it wasn't about them being fighters. It was them being another person, telling me about their life and what is important to them and what they face and what they've been through, whether it's something sad or something super happy. And
Yeah.
so it was just, man, it was motivating me to keep going. I was barely getting any sleep. I was gone from my little daughter for like 3 weeks at a time, just traveling the country. But
Mm.
it was those interviews that were just motivating me so much. And that's when I realized, like, okay, it doesn't matter who the person is. If you can talk to another person, even just on the street, and get a little bit of who they really are,
Yeah.
man, it at least for me, it kind of just feeds me. It kind of just builds me up. It's like, okay, that's cool. I just connected with another person, and I think that's what's important in life.
Yeah, definitely the interactions make, well, let's say a podcast much more that much exciting, much more
Hmm.
refreshing, as it's always a clash of different mindsets. But it's not necessarily about um, being on the same page, but about respecting each other and actually hearing the other person out. Right.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's exactly right. And learning, being able to learn from other people, even if you don't like certain things about them. Like maybe I don't care about the person's political affiliations or religious beliefs or whatever else.
Mhm.
But like in my head, one thing I was looking at was, okay, this person is happy, that person is not happy. What did this guy do? This guy did this stuff to become happy or to
Yeah.
become a good father. This guy's a good father. What did he do? That guy's a shitty father. What did he do? Okay, I'm not going to do his things. I'm going to do his things. And so
Yeah.
it kind of gave me like a little blueprint or a way to cheat, because I was like,
Mhm.
okay, this is a way that these guys are happy because they're doing these things. So let's do these things. And it wasn't that I necessarily agreed with them. Sometimes some of the guys I wouldn't have liked, but even the guys I wouldn't have liked or wanted to hang out with,
Mhm.
I still got something from their interview, and hopefully they got something from me too, by whatever I came at them with or my questions. Hopefully they got something from that as well. But I know I got something from each person that shared with me.
Yeah, I feel like, well, because we both have a similar way of doing podcasts, as it's interview based. I started to do this kind of podcast because you I'm just always prepared to be amazed by the person that's in front of me. And I'm always ready to learn something new because I know they know stuff that I don't know. So there is potential, right?
Mhm.
And I feel like meeting new people or talking to someone, it feels sometimes similar to reading a new book. It gives, right? It's an opportunity of learning something new because there's so much content and there's so much to find out in there.
Yeah, yeah. I think, and that's I tell everyone that they could be a writer because or an artist because everyone has powerful stories in them. Everyone has a story in them, and that they would probably benefit by sharing. I think a lot of us don't share our stories, or we don't think our stories are that powerful or impact. And it could be something small. Could be like I was 5 years old and my dad came home and just the way he looked at me. And some people would say, well, that's nothing, but if that kind of traumatized you as a kid, that's an important story, and that's one you
Mhm.
should tell and one you should write. And does so. I think a lot of people put themselves down. They put their experiences down. But yeah, no, I think everyone has a story in them. I love trying to dig it out, whether it's
Yeah.
written or just talking. Yeah, I love learning from people. I tell everyone that I know nothing. I know very little. I will never say that my beliefs are right about anything, because my experience is so limited. And I just think if more people had that kind of attitude where, you know what, I'm not sure if my beliefs are correct or not,
Yeah.
I think we'd be a lot better off, and just listen to other people and learn from them, and then make your decision. Like, okay, yeah, yeah, I think that does make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear just be humble and have an open ear, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Basically.
exactly.
Um, yeah, I had a thought in my mind, but it just slipped away. That just happens so
Oh,
many times. I'm like, and then like, that's gone.
that's my entire life. I have to write everything down.
Oh yeah, right. Because it's really brief. Sometimes you have these moments where it just comes out of
Yeah.
nowhere, and like if you don't write it down in like 10 seconds, it's
Mhm.
gone.
Yeah, that's my life for sure.
And then it hurts so much. Like, no, this was gold. um, actually, I wanted to ask you about advice for young authors, and let's just say generalize it as young creators and creatives.
Mhm.
I mean, we have been giving a ton of advice already, but maybe we can try to sum it down into a handful.
Okay. Yeah, so I would say number 1, go for it. Life's too short not to try things, to just go for it. Like what are you going to lose? So, if you don't try, then you're going to fail. So just go for it. Get rid of any doubts. Just do it for yourself to start with too. Like, do what you like. Do it for yourself. If you enjoy it, then it's meant to be and you're going to be really good at it. I think that's a very important thing to remember. If you enjoy it, if you put in the time, you will be good. There's no reason to think you wouldn't be good if you put in the work. Whatever it is you do, if you keep at it, you're going to become excellent. Talk to other people, ask for advice. I'm in the Horror Writers Association. Not all my stuff is horror, but I really like their organization, and I just signed up to be a mentor, and so that way I could try to pass stuff on. So there are different, all kinds of different organizations where you can get advice from other people. Find people in your craft, see what they're doing. Realize that they had these self same, they all had probably the self doubt. They all had the same kind of worries and concerns and reasons why they couldn't do it. Uh, but in and then just start putting your stuff out there. Make sure it's quality. Try to get everything as quality as possible. Really figure out what your goals are. Is it monetary success, or what are your goals? Why are you doing it? And there's no
Mhm.
right or wrong answer for that. But if it is monetary, then make sure you do everything you need to be successful, with the marketing and everything else. So there's more, depending on where you are in your career, set those expectations, set realistic expectations,
Yeah.
and then just figure out, okay, I need to learn this, or I need to hire someone to do this, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I like having the idea in my head. I oftentimes will get a cover created early, just so I have it like, okay, that's going to be done. In my head, I was like, this isn't a book that I may or may not write. This is a book that's going to be written. This is something that I'm going to put out there. And so now I can look at this. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have that mindset. Like, it's not a question of whether or not I'm doing this. Like, I'm doing it. So yeah, I would say just get on it, get rid of any of that self-doubt, and it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks about you.
Yeah,
So
screw them.
do it for yourself. Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, yeah, it doesn't matter what anyone thinks. Doesn't matter what my mom thinks, my dad thinks, anyone. I don't care. Like, even if it's praise, it's like, yeah, that's awesome, but doesn't really matter. It's not changing me. That's great. But yeah, so that's something. And don't dwell on negative reviews or positive reviews. Just do it for yourself.
Yeah, those are all great advices. And I think not only you need to understand them for yourself, as their meaning is always individually based, so it always has a specific meaning to you, so you got to make it your own. But also you need to keep constantly reminding yourself of them. You need to understand them and not forget them, because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
easy to forget them.
Yeah, yeah. It's very, very easy to tell yourself these things, very easy to forget them, and very hard to believe too. It's like, because you can tell yourself that no one's opinion matters, but the second someone says something about you, whether good or bad, you're going to react. And so it is something that you have to remind yourself. You have to change that perspective. You have to want to almost force yourself to believe this new way of thinking.
Yeah, you got to train. It's something you need to train, just like when you become a fighter. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a long process.
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of people forget that, especially when it comes to something mental. When it's about changing perspective, a lot of people say that won't work for me because I'm this way. I've been this way my whole life. That's something that I hate hearing when people say I've been this way my whole life. It's like, okay, well, change it. Like, just work on it and change it. It may not be automatic, but you could figure out how to change it. And if you have trouble, then Google it, find it on the internet. Okay, what are the things I can do to change my perspective? And then do those things. And before you know it. So if it's important to you, you can do it. If it's not important, then don't. But yeah, if it is, then find a way to get it done, because art is important. I think that's really, something that a lot of people don't appreciate. A lot of people don't say. I think it's taken me a long time to accept that, but art is important. I think it's incredibly important. And what you can do with one photo, what you could do with one sentence, what you can do, you could transform someone. You never know what it is. You never know what you're going to create that's going to have that effect on someone else. So just create as much as you can. Get it out there. Don't hesitate. Don't procrastinate. Just do it.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. I would like to. So we're getting towards the end of the interview, and to finish up, I'd like to ask you a question I tend to ask all my guests, which is, what role does creativity play in your life? How you deal with it?
I have to, man, I love creativity. I'm in my head all the time. I'm very quiet. If someone else is around me, they might think I'm very self-centered, or I just don't want to talk to people or whatever else. But and this goes for my wife or kids. But I was like, I'm creating stories in my head. I'm trying to visualize this movie or this short story. I'm wondering whether or not this guy uses a knife, or does he use a gun, or how are they going to stop him? How's he going to die? So I'm always got this creativity going. I'm always doing it. And I think the different approaches, like sometimes I'll go into my sauna to write, because there are no distractions in my sauna. It's just me, the heat, and my writing, so sometimes I'll have to force my creativity out. It's like, I don't want to write. I don't feel creative right now, but I'm going to sit in this hot box for 60 minutes with my writing, and let's see if I could do something. So sometimes I have to force it. I enhance my creativity a lot using cannabis, which isn't available to a lot of people, which sucks. But so I use that to kind of open up my mind. So if I've been having a very rough day, if I've been stressed out. Let's say I had some arguments with my son, and then my wife and I got into a little argument, or it's just saw some bad stuff on the news. If I go outside, use cannabis, before like 5 minutes later, I'm writing. Like my brain is zeroed in. So I don't want to tell people that they should use cannabis in order to increase their creativity.
Mhm.
But to be honest, that is one of my tools. Um, but for me, man, like being on the airplane, I think so much of it is just our perspective. It's like all I want is a quiet place. I want to not be bothered. So on the airplane yesterday or 2 days ago, I put in my headphones, and man, I was like, this is wonderful. I'm zoomed in. I'm in this other world. So I think it's just figuring out what works for you. Don't give in to writer's block. Don't, maybe it's maybe you need to go outside and write. Maybe you need to get away from a computer. Maybe you be better doing it, on a different format. So it's just about figuring out what works the best for you. And the only way to do that is by experimenting, with different things. Not drugs. Don't experiment with drugs. Everything else.
Yeah. I mean, history is full of creators, painters, whatever, that played around with softer and harder drugs.
Yeah.
And delivered some great pieces of art. Just like,
Yeah.
I mean, just saying.
It definitely, I think it can, for me, it opens up my mind a little bit, but just really lets me get into where I need to get. But it's also nice knowing I don't need it. On this trip, I won't be using anything. I'll still get a lot of writing done. So, don't fall into the same trap I've had where it's like, okay, have I made it this crutch? Do I need it? It's like, I don't want to need anything to write a story.
Yeah.
Maybe it's going to make it a little bit better. But yeah,
Sure, you don't want to depend on it, right?
Right.
Obviously.
Exactly.
Like that would be bad. That's pretty much. I mean, yeah. I mean, feel free to experiment, but don't be abusive. Right?
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Balance. Yeah, finding that right balance. Again, with me, this is something I had to look at. Like, okay, how's it going to affect me? How's it going to affect my overall life? It's like just find like that's what it is, man. Because if you're not happy in your real life, I don't think your art is going to be as good either. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe angry, disgruntled people could make awesome art. They probably could. But I don't know. I like creating from a place of I want to be in a good place when I go to sit down to write.
Yeah.
I don't want to be angry. I don't want, and of course you could always put those emotions into your art, but you could put those emotions in anyhow once you know how to tap into them. I could tap in right now into being really angry. I could go back to an angry moment in my life and then just put that into my writing. I don't have to be angry. And I think that was a problem before when I first started writing, because I was so angry and everything else. But now it's like, no, I'd rather come at it from a place of like, oh, I'm in a good place with my life.
Yeah.
Now I'm just going to go and I'm going to go play make believe.
Yeah, totally. I just realized that too, that both things are doable and possible. In my mind, I'm just thinking of a painter that is in a rage and just does an abstract painting. That could work, right?
Yeah.
But I count myself on the other side, just like you do. That I'm way more productive, constant, and effective when I'm in a stable mindset, in a stable life, where I don't have that many spikes going on.
Yeah. I don't like spikes anymore. I used to live off of them. I used to be an adrenaline junkie, and I would want those spikes, but nah. I was like, I'm cool. I want nice and easy.
Okay. I mean, as a boxer or an MMA fighter, you kind of need that rush, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't, you're kind of doing the wrong sport.
Yeah.
This has been really great. I've enjoyed our talk a lot. It's so funny to me that you have done this in a car.
And if you can't tell, I'm sweating. It's like 90 degrees out there.
Oh no.
But, hey,
you have your windows closed. So
yeah. Sometimes we have to suffer for our art too. That's another great thing to remember, everyone.
Okay. I appreciate your sacrifice for this. Okay. I always give I guess our last opportunity to share something you might have missed out or you want to get across, that is important to you, that we want the listeners to hear.
Awesome. More than anything, man, I want to help other artists grow, just become as awesome as you can be. Don't limit yourself. I got a late start. I don't like that I started so late. I started late because even though I had the desire to write as a younger kid, it was coming out dark, and I just thought it was a bad thing, and I didn't do it. And also how I was looking at like kind of I didn't want to be an artist. But yeah, I would say just go for it. I wish I had started earlier. I realize now, I'm going to write till the day I die. So I'm very limited to how much I'm going to produce because I'm older, damn, I'm almost 50. So start young and just have fun with it, man. Just create as much as you can. Don't worry about what's coming out, what it's going to look like, who's going to like it, who's not going to like it. You never know. So just have fun. And if anyone ever wants to talk to me, starting out artists or whoever, shoot me an email. I'm always happy to talk to people, help people, work with people. And that's at marktullius.com. All my stuff is at marktullius.com on Amazon. But yeah, just look me up, connect with me. That's what I think life is all about. A lot of people don't do that. I have a lot of readers. Well, a good amount of readers will write to me with my newsletter and write back, but they always feel like they shouldn't, or they don't want to bother me too much or whatever else. Like, we're regular people, and I love talking to people and connecting to people. So those emails are super awesome. And so, yeah,
Okay, I appreciate you brought that up. So people can find out and find you on your website, and probably also on Instagram and some other sites you're active on.
Yep. So website is marktullius.com. I'm active probably the most on my Facebook group. It's a dark and disturbing, fear-filled fiction. So if you like dark stuff, it's a mouthful. But just find author Mark Tullius on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. But yeah, I'm all there. And then all my stuff is on Amazon. But and again, something else I tell people, there are a lot of people out there that really can't afford, ebooks even, or whatever. They might have had a hard time during the pandemic. I tell people, just write to me, tell me what you want, and I'll shoot you a copy. It doesn't cost me anything. So I'm always happy to hook people up with and find new readers. That's not me being some super generous guy. That's me like, hey, I need new readers. Come on. Try it.
You want that feedback. You want that, actually having a look at your art.
Exactly. I'm a narcissist. I think lots of us as as an artist, I think, it's like, we want people to read our stuff. We don't want to just create it to sit in a room. Like we want to see how people react to it. So I'm always excited to get new readers.
Okay, great. So just like always, you'll be able to find all of these links to the website, Facebook, Instagram in the description, and all social media posts. They will be linked up.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mark, again for being here with us today. Really appreciate you taking the time and putting the effort. And thank you all listeners for being here and supporting us with your time and your energy. If you would like to be part of the show, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always looking for new people, for new creative minds. Again, thank you. I'm Lucas, and this was the Creative Cast.